First, I add a plane mesh to the scene. Then I select two vertices on one side of the plane and delete them. This gives me a clean edge to work with for my design. Next, I add a screw modifier to the plane. Think of it like rolling a flat paper into a tight cylinder. This modifier spins the shape around its axis, creating a smooth rolled effect. Now, to make our rolled plane stand upright, I rotate it 90 degrees on the x-axis. This turns our rolled shape from lying flat to standing tall, just like a standing paper roll. Next, I switch to edit mode. Select all vertices and press M on the keyboard. Then I choose merge by distance to clean up any overlapping points, keeping the mesh neat and error-free. Now, I scale down the shape along the z-axis, making it shorter like the size of cap. Then I add a loop cut right in the center of the edges to prepare for more detailed shaping. Now, we need to make both the upper and lower edges flat. So I select the top and bottom vertices and flatten them along the z-axis. After that, I merge the vertices together to clean up the mesh. Remember, like a rolled paper, this shape is rolled, but not fully connected into a cylinder, so the edges stay open and separate. Next, I bevel the edge to soften the transition. For those vertices that don't have anything to connect to, we need to create new vertices to bridge the gap. So I select the edge that will connect to the loose vertex, then subdivide it twice, giving us 3 new vertices. Next, I connect 2 of those vertices together and dissolve the one we don't need, keeping the mesh clean and efficient. Same for the other side. Now, I extrude the faces along the axis of the beveled edge, adding depth and volume to the model. Then, I apply a subdivision surface modifier. And just like that, the model instantly becomes smooth and more realistic. As you can see, we're running into some trouble here. That's because we missed joining a vertex at both the top and bottom. It's a small thing, but it causes gaps and shading issues. So, let's fix that by connecting those missing vertices properly. Now we've successfully created the hard part of this mesh. Next, let's create the bottom of the bottle. I simply extrude the edges downward, forming the base of the bottle with clean geometry. Now, as you can see, you probably already know what's next. Yep, we need to add loop cuts to support the subdivision surface modifier. These cuts help keep the edges sharp and maintain the shape after smoothing. Finally, to give our model some real volume, I add a solidify modifier to make it thicker from the inside. Then, to finish off, I create the bottle cap by simply adding a cylinder, keeping it simple and clean. And finally, we're done modeling this bottle. Clean, simple, and ready for the next step. Let's start modeling the package for this bottle. But before jumping in, here's a quick tip for you. If you ever need to create packaging for your model, don't just start with a cube or plane. There's something called die lines. They're the precise outlines used to design real packages. So, take a moment, head over to Google, and download some die line reference images. They'll help you get the shapes and folds just right. Alright, now that you have your reference, let's hop into modeling the package. First, I add a plane mesh. Then, I shape it carefully to match the die line's reference image. This gives me the basic outline for the package. Here's another tip for you. When you want to create shapes like this, don't just subdivide and move vertices around. Instead, select the edges and press Ctrl+B to bevel them. The bevel panel will pop up. Here, you can adjust the profile shape, size, and segments to match your design perfectly. This method saves time and gives you cleaner, smoother curves. Now the fun part begins. Let's start rotating the faces to form our box packaging. If you're wondering how to rotate them precisely, I've got you covered. First, select the edge where you want the rotation pivot. Then press Shift+S and choose Cursor to select it. Change your transform pivot point from individual origins to 3D cursor. Now when you rotate the face, it'll spin exactly around that edge. Repeat this for all the faces until you get your box label shape. And just like that, it's finally done. Our box packaging is ready and looking clean. Here's another tip for my subs. Before you start designing a label, don't jump in directly. First, apply a Smart UV project to your model. Head over to the UV Mapping tab, click UV, and open the drop-down menu. Then select Export UV Layout. This gives you an image showing the UVs, which is super helpful when designing your labels in programs like Figma or Photoshop. Now, let's head over to Figma and design the labels. Here's a crucial point. I actually made 2 labels for both the bottle and the package. Each has 2 parts, one for the overall look of the package, and another for the main logo and text design. By the way, while recording, I forgot to add the background color on one label, but I fixed it later. Just a heads up in case you noticed. Now, let's move on to lighting, and honestly, it's as simple as making noodles. Just add an HDRI, tweak a few settings, and boom, you're done. Nothing complicated, just smooth and natural light. Here's another tip while using HDRIs. Sometimes the lighting doesn't look right on certain parts of your model. Instead of rotating your entire scene, why not rotate the HDRI itself? Makes sense, right? Here's how. Go to the Shading tab. In the top left corner, you'll see Object. Click on that and change it to World. Now you'll see your HDRI as an image texture node. Simply press Ctrl+T to add a mapping node. Then rotate the HDRI to your liking. Easy and way better control over your lighting. Now, let's start applying our label to the model. First, we'll use the label with the background color as our base color. Then, in the UV Mapping tab, move and rotate the UVs to position the label exactly how you want it. And now, let's apply our second label. But here's the important part. Why use two separate labels on one mesh? We want the main heading title on the label to look bumpy and stand out from the rest of the text. To do that, we need a second label and use a mix shader. Just add an image texture for the second label. Connect its alpha channel to the factor of the mix shader, and add another principled BSDF shader. Here's the fun part. The color and shading of the heading label will change based on this second principled BSDF. So whatever properties you apply to it, roughness, metallic, whatever, it only affects the main heading. Isn't that awesome? To get that bumpy look on the heading, add a bump node in your shader setup. Connect the alpha channel of the same image texture to the height input of the bump node. Then, connect the normal output of the bump node to the normal input of your principled BSDF. Finally, tweak the strength and distance settings until you get the bump effect you like. Next, we'll apply the labels and bump effect to the other mesh, just like we did with the first one. Same process, base label for color, second label with mix shader for the heading, and bump node for that textured look. Now let's finish up the cap. I decreased the roughness to make it smoother, and add a clear coat for that glossy, polished look. And that's all, simple and effective. Finally, let's finish this tutorial by setting up the scene. I rotate the HDRI to get the perfect lighting angle for our model. Then, I add some depth of field to give the render the professional touch. And just like that, we're all done. If you like this video, just one like and subscribe would really keep me motivated. Got any tutorial ideas? Drop them in the comments. I want to hear from you. Till then, keep learning and be motivated.